Hi, this is lesson 1 for AP Music Theory, and this is Music Fundamentals. These videos that I'm going to make will be based off of Barron's AP Music Theory test prep book. So I do not use any direct questions, but I give credit to the writers of that book, and also the College Board. But yeah, that's what this is for, AP Music Theory. So okay, so warning. If you think you already know this,
Excuse me? Oh.
see, so you might think that you know a lot of these things, and that might be true, but you have to be careful because there's a lot of specifics. If you've taken any other AP classes, you probably know that the definition of College Board is pretty much making something that should be easy hard. So you think music theory is easy? Well, let's just see. You have to make sure that you know all these specifics. Okay, yeah, because you never know if you might be asked something like what I say. So let's see. Oh, sorry. Okay, so these are the vocab words. I'm not going to say them because I'm going to talk about them later on, but these are what words we're going to go through. Also these. Okay. First, wavelength. So if you've taken maybe a science class, maybe you know what this is. But if we're talking about in music, we're talking about pitch. But wavelength is the distance between waves. So the closer the waves are, the higher the pitch. The further away they are, the lower the pitch. And this is measured in hertz. And 440 hertz is a common standard tuning, by the way. But anyways, so those are pictures of my grandma, and she really hates high pitches. So let's see, for the first one, what would she do? What facial expression would she make by that? Well, she would probably do that one because that would be a high pitch sound, and she would not like that. The other one, not so much. She wouldn't really care. Okay, now let's talk about amplitude, which also has a lot of other names: dynamic, wave height, or volume. But you mostly need to know amplitude. This is how loud something is. So essentially just volume. The higher the wave is, the louder it is. So let's see. It can be measured in decibels, dB. And when we're representing this in music, we may have accents to change the amplitude, but we also usually have dynamics, which are. So yeah, it is useful to know dynamic also, but dynamics are, if you've ever seen music, that when they have an F or a P, and it tells you how loud to play. So let's look at this video from Back to the Future and see something. So what just happened? What sound wave was that more likely to be? That one, because it was definitely loud, so it would be high. Okay, timbre. This is really pronounced timbre, but this is also known as waveform, and this is the shape and form of a wave, not a save. Sorry about that. This is why different instruments sound different, even if the amplitude or pitch are the same. So if a violin plays an A and a piano plays an A, the exact same pitch, the exact same volume too, like they have the same wavelength and dynamic amplitude, they may sound different because of this timbre. Okay, now articulation, also called envelope, but in my opinion, more called articulation. This is the way that a note is played. So a note could be played thoroughly. Here, let me see. Here, I'm going to pause this for a second so I can get something. Okay, so hopefully you can hear this. I have my violin here. I'm just going to pluck it to show you. So you could play it short like this. That's staccato. So we have different symbols to represent this. You could play it long for the full value. That's called tenuto. Or loud, and there can be an accent. It's like looks like like the greater than or less than signs. So that's what articulation is, the way that you play something, and that's definitely useful in orchestras. Duration is how long a note or a rest is played, and there's different. If you've read sheet music, once again, you know that there's different kinds of notes. There's whole note, half note, quarter note, to show you what the duration should be. But we're not going to talk about that yet, the specifics. Okay, the staff. So this is where the music is written. And obviously you may know already this if you've played any instrument, but this is just where the music is written. There are 5 lines and 4 spaces on this always. And the notes go from A to G. So the higher up you are on the staff, the higher the note will be. But how do you know what note it's going to be? Well, that's when we get into clefs. So basically, it's kind of hard to explain, but the clefs just show you, they tell you like, okay, this line is this note. That's basically what they are doing. And they're different depending on the instrument. So lower instruments have to have different clefs, which mean that it's the same staff with 5 lines and 4 spaces, but the notes are different on the staff. So, and you're going to need to know how to read music for all 8. So even if you've like played the piano before or any instrument, you probably don't know how to do all of these. So let's see what they are. Okay, don't get overwhelmed, but these are the ones that there are. So there are, if you notice, there's 5 that look the same. They're like, oh, I see that curly looking thing. It looks like kind of like a number 13. That's called the C clef. The C clef, though, can have 5, it can be 5 different ways. It can be soprano, mezzo soprano, alto, tenor, or baritone. And you can remember smack B to know what order they are. Because if you see, that moves up 1 line each time. But that don't get confused. Soprano is not the lowest if you know anything about chorus. It is the highest. So you might be like, hey, well, then why is it lowest? Well, think about it. If a high note is lower on the staff, then that means that way up on the staff will be even higher. So think about it like that. But why is it called the C clef? Because it always says where C is. Oh, that's pretty useful. So wherever that the middle of that number 3 on that 13 is, that's where C is. Okay, this line is C, this line is C, this line is C, and so on. We also have the F clef, which usually we only see this bass clef. So it tells you where F is. So F is on this 4th line here. Then treble clef, which is the one that I'm the most familiar with, is on right here. It's the G, it's also called the G clef in this case, and that's where the note G is. And then there's also something called the neutral clef, and it sometimes still can have, the staff can still have 5 lines and 4 spaces, but this is for like rhythm instruments like drums. Like obviously there's not really pitch for that. So you don't have to read pitch when you're reading this kind of music, but just you would read duration. So this is how you know how to read the music. Okay, so let's look at, obviously those blue dots, that's not ever what notes look like, but this is just for the purpose of this. Now, there's something specific you need to know. So the C clef always shows where C4 is specifically. F clef is F3 and G clef is G4. You need to know those specific notes because we're going to talk about octaves. There are different Fs, different Gs, different Cs that have, some are more high pitched Cs and some are low pitched Cs. And if you look at the piano, the first C that's on the piano is C1, and then it goes all the way up. So that's important to know. You may have a question about that. All right, let's see. So here's soprano. All right, well, if we know this is the C clef, then this note has to be C because it's on that right where it is. Now this one, C is right here. I hope you can see my pointer. I'll just do this. C is right here. So this is D, this is E, because remember, we count the spaces. The spaces can be notes. As you can see, some of these are like that. So C, D, E, F, G. This is G. All right, now this is C this time, this line. So C, D, E. This is C right here, so we have to go down. B, A, G. Remember, they only go A to G, so then you go back to G. And then F. Now here, this is still C clef, C, B. All right, now this time it's the F clef. So we have F, E, D, C, B, A. And if you know how to play the piano, probably you already knew that. But this is just how to do it if you didn't know how to read the clef. Just stick to whatever technique you know. Like if you already know how to, for me, I know this clef front and back, and I'm pretty decent with this one. I'm not as familiar with the C clefs. So you just do whatever you need to do. I already know this is F, but if you don't know how to read this clef, you would do G, A, B, C, D, E, F. But obviously, like every other AP exam, this is timed. So you're gonna have to know how to do this quick. So for more practice, go to musictheory.net. Eventually, it shouldn't take that long before you can know the note right away. Like if I turn on this page, you could answer in 5 seconds. So it just takes a second at first. All right, system. Sometimes, like for piano sheet music, there are multiple staffs that are connected. This is a system. The left hand plays this part with the bass clef, and the right hand plays this part with the treble clef. And they are connected by middle C, which is C4. Okay, now we'll talk about octaves. That's what I already said. So these are the same note, but different levels of pitch. So just look at the piano. If this is C, this is also C, but they're not going to sound same. Obviously, this one's a more high pitched one. And like I already said, middle C, C4. And sometimes we can hear this in music. So listen to 2 Muse songs if you know that band, but just let's see. So first, this one, Supremacy. So if you could hear, it went, Matt Bellamy, the singer, went from E5 to E6. So I'm not going to imitate that because it would sound terrible. But if you could see that, if you could hear, that was the same note, but it was just a more high pitched one. That's pretty hard to do in singing. All right, then here's another one, A flat 5 to A flat 6. So that was also the same note, but so yeah, same thing. Okay. Okay, sorry. I don't know why it replays it when I try to go past it. Okay, ledger lines. Sometimes notes are too low or too high for a staff. If this happens, ledger lines are used. And sometimes it can be difficult to read these, but like I did for the other thing, you still have to count up or down, depending on what it is. So this note is C. We would know if G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Don't forget to count your spaces. Now, it's not, like I said, it's not always above. There's sometimes some down here, and you would do the same thing. And those would be easier to find once you can be familiar with just the staff. Okay, accidentials. So you think there's only A, B, C, D, E, F, G? Well, there's other notes in that. Technically, there are 12 notes. 12 different notes that there are, and they are shown right here. Let's count to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes, 12. So really, in music, there are only 12 notes. But obviously, like we just looked at, there's octaves, so there's the piano has 88 keys, but there's really only 12 different notes on it. So how do we, what are these other notes that aren't just the 7 letters? Well, there's ones that have accidentials. Now, here's where things get a little bit weird. We're going to look at enharmonic equivalents, but some notes are the same. But let's just start out by looking at our accidentials. So if something's just normal, you have a natural symbol. That's this symbol right here. In music, if there's nothing there, then you assume that it's natural, unless we'll talk about later if there's a key signature that you already would know that it's sharp or flat. But when there's nothing by it, it is natural. And like I just said, I mean, it's kind of hard to explain like without getting into key signatures, which we'll talk about later. But basically, unless it's already assumed to play a sharp or flat, you would just assume that it's natural. But the only reason why they would put that symbol by it is if there was a flat. So you had B flat, and then they want you to play B natural. Well, they can't just put BB, because then someone would try to play B flat, B flat. So they would have to put a natural for you to know to go up to natural. So obviously the 2 main ones that there are, flat, it's the symbol that looks like a B. It tells you to go down 1/2 step. And a half step is basically the closest interval, we'll talk about intervals, between notes. So if 2 keys, a black key and a white key, play beside each other on the piano, that's half step. See right here, D, D flat. When you push them together, they're like, like they kind of clash. Then we have a sharp. That looks like a hashtag symbol, but it means to go up. So F right here, F sharp. Now there's also these that are not as common. There are double flat and double sharp. Double flat just looks like 2 flats together, and double sharp looks like some sort of like medieval coat of arms symbol or something. I don't know what you would call it, but they mean to go, that's like doing it 2 times. And we'll look at that in the next slide to see what I mean. But basically, there's some that's what you need to know about this. There's flat brings it down lower, sharp brings it down, or brings it up higher, and they are half steps. And these are whole steps, or 1 step, whatever you would say. Now, this is important. Enharmonic equivalents. Some notes are the exact same, but they're written differently depending on the key signature, which if you don't know what that is, that's just something that if you see at the beginning of music and you see if sharps and flats, they just tell you, all right, the whole song, you're going to play a F sharp if you see a sharp on the F line. But basically, just depending on the song, they might use a different one. So if you see D flat and C sharp are the exact same, but if a song already has sharps in it, they're going to want to use C sharp. If it already has flats in it, then they're probably going to use D flat. So it just depends on the song. It's not that common to see both sharps and flats. They'll usually stick to one unless C major, but you know, we're going to talk about that. So, okay. And same thing here, E flat, D sharp, same, F sharp, G flat, A flat, G sharp, B flat, A sharp, and then the funky ones that I circled with green. So if you notice on the piano, like, oh, there's not a black key in between those. Well, these are already E and F and B and C. You need to remember those. They're kind of weird. They don't have a black key in between them, and that means that they are 1/2 step away from each other. So F is really E sharp, and E is really F flat, and same thing with B and C. B is really C flat, and C is really B sharp. But these notes, B sharp, F flat, E sharp, and C flat, are not very common unless you have a very complex key signature. So usually you would just see C, E, B, and F. So, and then the other thing over here with the double flats and double sharps, So if this is G flat, which is the same thing as F sharp, and this is G double flat. F is the same thing as G double flat. And like I said, these are also only if there's very complex key signatures, not very common. And then here we have A is G double sharp because this is G sharp and this is G double sharp. So hopefully that's not too confusing, but it may be simpler if you just look at a piano and know how the keys work. All right, interval, this is the distance between notes. This is already what I was saying. We have half step, whole step. But we'll talk more about this later because there's bigger intervals than just that. Note head and flag. So this might just seem simple, like, oh, well, the head's the circle part, and this flag is that part that sticks out. Well, something you need to know is they'll take off points if you don't draw it the right way. Oh, and I forgot to say back here, accidentials are always written to the left of a note. And if you don't do that, then they would take off points. So you need to know that it goes upside down if it goes past the third line on any clef. So see how we have this flag going up and the head is lower for this note. If this was treble clef, that would be G. But if it goes past this middle part, then it's upside down. And notice how it is. The flag is to the left right there, but when it's like that, it's to the right. So you need to know that so that you can draw it right. Okay, measures and bar lines. So measures are in sheet music, it's a section of music. So see, this is measure number 73. All these different sections are measures. And these are just useful so that the music can be split into sections. So maybe if you are in a band or orchestra, they'll say, okay, play measure 50 or something like that. Like that just helps you to know where to go and stuff like that. Bar lines are what separates the measures. So this would be measure 71, this is 72, this is 73. There can be a double bar line if there's a new section of music. So if you see these different flats, this is a different key signature. So that means, oh, now every note that's right here will be flat, and right here, and right here, and right here. But we'll talk more about that later. But that's why there's double bar line in this music, because I can't tell what the key signature was before, but obviously it changed because that's what they don't draw that again unless it changed. And then there's something called final bar line. It's when there's a thick black line, and that just means it's the end of the music. There can be a cautionary accidental. This is if it's already known that something is a natural sharp or flat, but the composer wants to make sure that it's not misplayed. Sorry, that's not what you'd say. So for example, for this one, once again with the key signatures, trying not to get in too much into that, but this note is B. So you remember it's a G clef, so G, A, B. But since there's a flat here, that means everything that goes on this line should be flat. But whoever wrote this put a flat here in parentheses, like, all right, well, we already know it's a flat, but just in case, so you don't play it wrong, we'll put it there. And that is very helpful. I've played music before, and those are helpful. Sometimes I write them in myself because sometimes you're like, if you're playing a bunch of B naturals, when it goes to the new measure, then it's expected that you would play B flats again if there's that in the key signature. So then you might be like, oh, great. Because obviously, if you know, that wouldn't sound good if someone played a B natural when it was supposed to be a B flat, because that's like pushing two keys beside each other on the piano. Half step intervals don't sound very good. All right, now chromatic pattern. This is the last thing. This is when there's a bunch of half steps. So just going up, like if you were a little kid, you used to play all the piano keys going up and then going down or something. That's a chromatic pattern. And they don't necessarily have to be right beside each other, because if you see these are rests, so that means you don't play it. So I already know from this music this was a bass clef. So this is C, C sharp, D, E flat. So that's going right up. And because this could also be a D sharp, but since this is in really this song is in F major. Well, there's no reason for me to say that, but like I said, that with the enharmonic notes, they so this is C sharp, but it's also D flat. And that seems like it would make more sense in this case, because like I said, usually I don't have both sharps and flats, but that's just the way that this happened to be written. But anyways, thank you for watching this video. That was the end of lesson 1 and 15 more to go.